60 Minutes with Angela starts right now.
Nigeria's federal government says that it is doing a lot to restore Nigeria's lost glory in the minerals and mining sector by driving public sector enabled and private sector led mineral sector transformation. And they may be right, because according to Nigeria's National Bureau of Statistics, the mining sector contributed 103 billion naira in 2015 to her gross domestic product, GDP. The National Bureau of Statistics says that coal mining grew by 2.03%, metal ores by 40.79%, and quarrying of other metals by 52.54%. Well, hello and welcome to the program. I'm Angela Ajitsumobi. And so the Minister for Mines and Steel Development, Dr. KAYODE FAYEMI, joins me on the program to give me what the ministry is doing about furthering the President's vision, diversifying this economy with the development of mines and steel. At the time you became federal minister on the 11th of November 2015, we knew that solid minerals had only contributed about 0.06% to our gross domestic product. But you always said that we had good prospects in that sector. We have about 44 key minerals spread over our 36 states. Yet we wonder why the states are not taking advantage of that and getting involved in the mining sector.
I think there are a number of factors why mining had not taken off at the level that we would all have loved to see. The most critical factor was the concentration on oil and gas. For Nigerians who were born after the 70s or 80s,
yes,
they can't even come to terms with the fact that mining used to contribute between 5 to 7% to the GDP
yes,
in the country. From the early 1900s to 1970s.
yes.
So we discovered oil and everything went pear-shaped with mining, at least mining of solid minerals.
Yes.
We exchanged mining of solid minerals
For
mining of hydrocarbons,
gas, yes,
the liquid mineral. Second, just as every other country did in Africa in the age of dependency,
yes,
we also decided that we must nationalize our mining assets. The mines that were thriving in the 60s and 70s in Nigeria,
yes,
were largely run by foreign investors. But the indigenization decree came in 1972, and mining became a national asset. So we set up the Nigerian Mining Corporation, we set up the Nigerian Coal Corporation, we set up the Nigerian Iron Ore Company, we set up the Ajaokuta Steel Company, all national assets. Unfortunately, we didn't quite manage those assets well.
yes,
And we saw the results of that in even the modicum impact that mining used to have degenerated rapidly. Third, we never, although previous governments since the 60s had that as part of the National Development Plan and Vision, we never quite succeeded in using our mineral assets
yes,
to promote an import substitution and backwards integration strategy. So, although we have them, granites are all over Nigeria, yet we still import granite tiles, marble tiles, which you find in almost every state in the country. The stones are there. All that it requires is polishing, cutting, packaging, and then selling to the construction industry or to private end users. But in the era when money was not a problem, but how to spend it, we imported everything. We imported cement, although we have abundance of limestone. We imported granite tiles and marble tiles, although we're so fit with these stones. We imported asphalt for road construction, yet we're the fourth largest reserve of bitumen in the world. We imported pharmaceuticals, yet these countries are awash with kaolin all over the place, and several others. So the answer to your question, simply, we discovered oil and gas, which has benefited Nigeria, and we can't run away from that, but we've seen the ills of over-concentrating on a monoproduct. And I think that's one of the reasons why President Buhari, when he came in, insisted that the diversification of our revenue program must be championed by a return to agriculture as business and a return to mining as a job creator and a revenue generator.
And that puts a lot of pressure on you, because if the president is hoping to generate employment with your ministry, it means that you have really to deliver. But speaking with the special advisor to the president on media, Mr. Femi Adesina, he says, you've mentioned that federal executive meetings, that there is a gestation period of about 20 years. So I was speaking with Bolade Omonijo, a colleague of mine. I said, well, you know, we're still building the foundation. And he said, we've been building that foundation for years, since the time of Obi Ezekwesili as minister. When will we actually start the building of the house?
Well, I think you're both right. Bolade is right that we've been building the foundation, in fact, since the Obasanjo administration came into office in 1999, because that's when the whole issue of rejigging the regulatory and the legal framework started. It was accelerated when Obi became minister, and other ministers built on that. So you could say, in a sense, that we have a good law in place, relatively speaking, one that can compare with many around the world, which was the Nigerian Mining and Minerals Act 2007. You could also say that many of the regulatory institutions have been put in place. We have the Mining Cadastral Office that now manages the licensing administration of mining, which used to be totally all over the place before. We have the Mines Environmental Compliance Directorate, which monitors and regulates safety, health and safety, as well as environmental sustainability in the sector. Mining is a very, very environmentally challenging sector. So you need to have the proper framework, as well as collaborate effectively with the Ministries of Environment and the Ministry of Health in order to achieve safer mining practices. 3, we have the Artisanal and Small-Scale Mining Directorate, which really never used to be there. But the country discovered that the bulk of the people in mining are actually artisanal miners, not the majors. I mean,
not the companies. Because when you're driving into Abuja, you see people carving the rocks
with their shovels and diggers. They're all over the place. So the first challenge is, how do you formalize these elements who are basically just trying to eke out a living? I mean, what they're doing is, technically and legally speaking, illegal, in the sense that they don't have the license to undertake those tasks that they have embarked on. But when you're trying to build a sector, you need to straddle between tradition and modernity. These people, many of them, are on their ancestral lands. So when you say what you're doing is illegal, he really doesn't understand what you're talking about. How can I be illegal on my father's land? And yet, you're trying to attract the majors, as you put them, or the, what we call in the sector, the juniors, You cannot accept the junior if there is no regulatory certainty, if the laws are not predictable, if the vehicle for arbitrating is not clear, and there is consistency in policy formulation and implementation and proper enforcement of our laws. It's a no-brainer. They wouldn't come because they want that certainty. So you have to find a mechanism that enables you to integrate, on the one hand, the informal elements operating in the mining sector with the, if you like, money bags in the sector, because mining is capital intensive. You don't want to put your money in a place where you get to and somebody tells you, oh yes, you say you brought a license from Abuja. Welcome, but here we don't know you. This is our line. So, but the law has attempted, and I would say effectively, to address those issues by bringing on board the concerns of the host community. So you cannot have a license, for example, if you do not have a consent of the host community. So this addresses some of the gaps that we've seen that led to crisis in the Niger Delta, for example, where our communities have really protested how they were treated. On the other hand, the law, as it currently is, tried to bring on board states through what is called Miremco. Miremcos are the committees set up at the level of the state in which all mining stakeholders are a part, and the federal also gets involved in it. Even with the best of intentions, all these laws that we're talking about, all these policies and regulations that we've put in place, 2007 Mining and Minerals Act, 2008 Minerals Policy, 2011 Minerals Regulation, you have all these things there. But there's always a challenge between the letter of the law and enforcement of the law. And I think if you argue correctly, as Bolade did, that the first phase, if you like, the first decade, 99 to 2010, so to speak, was a period in which we were developing the mechanisms, the mandates for the various newly created departments, the laws, all of that were put in place. And then the building, actual implementation of what have been captured and encapsulated in those laws and regulations, implementation started in 2010. So you could suggest that really we haven't really started. Because mining is hugely capital intensive. Between exploration and actual production takes averagely between 15 to 20 years in any jurisdiction, because exploration is a deeply rigorous element of mining, and you cannot mine if you don't know what is there
under the soil.
Exactly. You can say, yes, we have 44 minerals, but what does that amount to? What is their quantity in terms of reserve? What is the quality? What's the commercial viability? What is the infrastructure provision between the market and the mines? These are the practical issues that we don't often take on board when we say, but we've been doing it for this number of years, it's taking so long. Mining is not a quick fix. Mining is not even agric. Agric, you can plant maize 3 seasons in a year. If you have irrigation, you can plant rice 4 quarters. But with mining, it's tough. You cannot do it in such a quick way. But even at that, we've made some progress. Take cement. The same country that I was talking about earlier that imported every single bag of cement, and many of them rebagged. They will come and then rebagged somewhere in Apapa ports and then sent to the market. Today, that's not the story, because the Obasanjo policy of backward integration and insistence that only those who are producing locally can import the gap that exists in the market has enabled a very rapid growth in the local cement production industry, to the point where we're now a net exporter
of
cement, not a net importer. And you can replicate this, as we're now trying to do with bitumen, with granite, with a number of other minerals that we know we have in abundance in the country.
We'll take our first break. When we come back, we'll talk about the Bitumen project and the fact that expression of interest by prospective investors was due to start this month of June.
Yeah.
So join us again after the break.
Nice question.
Angela, that's a great question.
It's a good question.
It is difficult to respond to that question.
That is a serious question.
Angela, that is a very great question.
Great question, Angela.
You know, Angela, that's a very difficult question.
That's a great question, Angela.
Okay, that's a great question.
Angela, that's a tough one for me.
That's a good question. Good question.
60 Minutes with Angela. Again, answers to every question you always wanted to ask.
Welcome back. If you've just joined us, it's 60 Minutes with me, the Ministers Forum. On my hot seat today, Dr. KAYODE FAYEMI is the Minister of Mines and Steel Development. Expression of interest by prospective investors was meant to start this June. I understand that the deposit of bitumen we have here, I thought was the second largest. It's the second only to Canada. And that most of it is situated in Ondo State. I don't know if those
Not
facts
quite
are,
true.
I
It
don't know
is
if those-
situated in 4 states.
Okay,
Edo, Ondo, Ogun, Lagos.
all right,
Ondo and Ogun have the bulk of it.
of it. What is the Bitumen project?
The Bitumen project is also an attempt on the part of government to ensure that we utilize what God has given us here. 80% of the asphalt that we use in the construction industry for roads that you see all around the place is imported. Yet, a critical part of our roadmap is that local processing and beneficiation is our route to industrialization, and that we must start utilizing these products locally by processing them locally. I mean, a lot of our minerals that people talk about are exported raw. We are trying to discourage that.
So we don't add any value.
We don't add
to
any
it.
value. We just take them out, and we're cheated often in the process of these minerals being taken out, because minerals are almost always associated. You don't find any mineral standing alone most times. So if you have lead, you are likely to have silver
with it.
You are likely to have gold with it. But if you don't have a separation process, which is the processing aspect of this, you tend to lose everything because you give it away at a very cheap price. But the people getting it, whether they're Chinese or Indians or Brazilians or you name it, they know that when they get to where they're taking these minerals to, they're going to separate them and get more bang for their buck than Nigerians and our governments that actually have these endowments. And for us, a primary departure point for the president and for this government is that the natural resources of Nigeria must serve Nigerians first and foremost. We're not averse to investors coming in. We're not averse to them developing our assets because they have the technical expertise that we may not have. But ultimately, these engagements must be structured in a manner that the local communities, the states, and our government, the federal government, take a larger share of the benefits and utilize these in the interest of the citizens.
So are you going to be compelling training, for instance, acquisition of skills, transfer of all that to our own people?
That's major for us in the roadmap. In fact, a strong synergy that we're trying to drive in the roadmap is between industry, academy, and government. So a significant chunk of the funds that we're going to be putting out would actually benefit academic institutions as well as skills building institutions, because this is a sector that is significantly lacking in technical skills. And we're encouraging those who are already in the industry to help drive that process. I mean, Dangote is setting up an academy very soon. I think they're starting the academy in January 2018. And averagely, they want to be able to train like 1,000 technicians in the sector without any insistence that they must work for them. They'll be trained. They're not compelling them to do that, but they are guaranteeing them that if they receive the kind of training they want to give them, there will be jobs out there for them, even before they complete their training. So for us, that is a critical part of it. But it's also the structure of the engagement, which is why we see another role for us as a government to collaborate and cooperate with states. Mining would not happen in Nigeria in the way we want it to happen if we do not enlist the support of states. Yeah. The constitutional challenge that we have, which we can't really be the ones to solve in the executive. We're not the legislative branch of government, so we're not going to be really in charge of driving constitutional amendment. That's a job for another arm of government. But for us, pending the time that anything happens to the constitution, we cannot wait. We have to find a mechanism that allows a win-win approach between us as the federal government that is primarily responsible for issuing licenses and managing mining and mineral resources, because it's on the exclusive list of government, and states where these minerals are located.
Is that why you are urging states to form economic cooperation among themselves?
Yes, we're urging them to form zonal, regional, what have you, corporations among themselves, particularly where the minerals actually straddle more than one state. Because the way minerals are, you cannot limit them. You can't say, oh, you must stop on the boundary of Kaduna State, don't go into Kano State. It doesn't work that way. So there must be a way in which they have the same understanding and they're prepared to work together on developing their mineral assets in their own domain. But besides that, we are also encouraging states to form their own special purpose vehicles, because legally speaking, states cannot own licenses. But there is nothing that says states cannot own investment companies registered by CAC. And if it is a legal entity that is independent of the states, and we encourage the states to take a limited equity in these vehicles rather than own everything. So when they do that, there is no legal impediment from us issuing licenses to such companies. And there's nothing stopping them from utilizing such a special purpose vehicle to engage a technical partner that can then enable them to set up, whether it's a processing company or an exploration entity or a production entity in their own domain, that then helps to generate jobs and increase the revenues to the states.
I was listening to the governor of Enugu State, Governor Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi, who says the federal government should revoke mining licenses given to private companies and hand them over to the state governments.
Well, Governor Ugwuanyi is very passionate about his views as far as the coal assets in his state is concerned. I have had very robust engagement with him. I went to see him in the state. I toured the assets that federal government has in those states, and I believe that's not exactly his position. But you know, in order to get to a reasonable point, you push an extremist argument, and then when we sit down and work it out, we all come to a middle ground and a consensus. What I believe the governor is interested in is for those assets to be developed first and foremost, so that it could serve the people of Enugu State and perhaps the zone. Don't forget, this was the zone that produced the coal that we used to power Ijora in the 60s and Oji River. These were the coal-fired generating plants that provided electricity for Nigeria. Up till the 70s, there are opportunities to develop these coal assets now. We are prioritizing power because of the existential need that Nigeria has for power generation. And we're encouraging those who want to invest in coal exploration and exploitation to link it to power generation. So those are the kind of conversations we've been having with Governor Ugwuanyi and his colleagues. But it's understandable. I mean, the other day, I also read Governor of Taraba my friend, Governor Ishaku,
yes.
who raised hell about why federal government must have exclusive hold over minerals that are in his state. It's understandable. And as a former governor, I know where they're coming from. So when I engage them on these issues, they can see that I am not coming with an imperious attitude. We are the federal government, you are the state.
We know it all.
This is our assets. You can go to hell. No. I really appeal to them that, look, let's engage and organize these assets to benefit all of us. And as a mark of our faith, we have already started ensuring that you benefit from the assets located in your state.
Yes.
The derivation principle has started in solid minerals under this administration. So if you have any assets that is generating revenue for the federal government, 13% of it goes back to you. Already. And states are benefiting from it. So we're showing good faith here.
Yes.
And we're even saying that, okay, even over and above this, let's look at other ways. We don't know where we're going to land, but we're encouraging companies who want to develop assets in particular states not to ignore the interest of the communities and the states. Although federal government encourages private investors to own their company 100%, we don't insist on you giving us 30% equity or this is a black minority share or this or that. No. We're not into that. But we do advise that in order for you to secure what you have, it is also in your interest to ensure that the locals have a stake. How you define that, how you work it out with them is entirely your business. But if you want me to protect what is in my area, of course, if you give my community people jobs, if you build schools for us, if we benefit from a health center because you are operating in our environment, and you also ask us to take equity, we will die on that land. Nobody will come and attack you there.
But you can understand the reluctance with a lot of the states, having seen the degradation that oil refining and crude oil in the Niger Delta, how it has affected that environment. You can understand why some of these governors...
I can understand, but I have a philosophy, and I believe that all of us have one or two things to learn from that. I mean, as a student of history, I always encourage that we must learn from history. But we must never become slaves to history, because it will hold us down. Fine, we've seen the problems in the Niger Delta. The lessons ought to be learned by us as a country and a people. But we must not be so weighed down by that experience and that unfortunate history as to not to move ahead and correct the situation as we go along. And that's why I refer to the law. If you look at our law, it has already factored in the place of the host community. Never mind the implementation. The implementation is a bit of a challenge because people have also taken all manner of advantage of that particular insistence that you must have a consent from the community before we give you a license.
Yes, the communities sometimes are holding them to ransom.
Communities hold people to ransom, but even sometimes you don't even know which community you're dealing with. I mean, you may be dealing with the town's union in one, and in some others they will say it is the district head, and then there's a clash between the district head and the union of the community, which then affects your business. So it's a tricky area, which is why for us enforcement is a key vehicle for guaranteeing certainty. So we're working with the security agencies, for example, to ensure that in areas where we are seeing rampant and irresponsible behavior by artisanal miners, we work out an arrangement that either brings them into the equation formally, or if we think that they are really mega illegal, because there are illegals that are just, we just want to survive. But there are mega illegal operators.
Those are the ones you call exporters of unprocessed minerals.
Many of them do that, exporters of unprocessed minerals, and they trade massively in minerals from areas where they don't even have mining license to operate. And some of them are foreigners.
Okay, so that's what you mean by unprocessed mineral.
They take unprocessed minerals out, and in the course of doing that, they bypass all the laws. And we don't, up to this moment that we got in and we started re-engineering things, we really didn't have a proper mechanism for monitoring what is going out of our ports. Even our custom officers are not sufficiently knowledgeable about minerals. It's not their fault.
Yes.
We have a duty to actually partner with them, as we're doing now,
yes,
to ensure that they also have an understanding
and
of
can
the
identify
difference between a sapphire and a topaz,
yes,
between gold and lithium, between limestone and
yes,
lead zinc.
yes.
So these are things that we believe that we need to also jointly train the officials on, in order for them to better appreciate the minerals they're dealing with.
Let's talk about your roadmap now, the mining roadmap. You say the roadmap is consultative and inclusive.
Absolutely.
What do you mean by that?
Well, because the roadmap is the product of a series of engagements. We came in November as ministers, my colleague and I, and one of the very first things we did within the first month,
yes,
we went to major mining assets. We engaged the players in the industry. We engaged the governmental institutions dealing with mining. We engaged academia and training institutions. We then found out what the challenges in the sector were. And in highlighting that, we decided that the best way to go was to set up a robust roadmap committee that would include academics in the field, practitioners in the field, state government representatives, miners associations representatives.
right.
So in putting this together, we had a cross-section of players in the industry, and they were to look at the challenges of funding, they were to look at the problems of inadequate geological data,
Right.
they were to examine the infrastructural challenges that are there, the problems of artisanal and small-scale mining that I already talked about.
Yes.
They were to look at the beneficiating and processing challenge. How do we tackle that? So all of the gaps, they look at formalizing the illegals, if you like.
Yes.
And in all of these areas, we also brought in specialists who have a much clearer understanding of the sector globally. We had consultants from Deloitte, from PwC, from Bain and Co.
Yes.
And they worked with our local team in order to develop what we produce.
Yes.
And when we eventually got the report from the committee, we then subjected it to a stakeholder engagement with states. We invited state attorneys general,
Yes.
as well as departments responsible for mineral resources in all the 36 states. We had the stakeholder forum in Kaduna May last year, and they rejigged some of the things we said. They highlighted areas where they thought we could do more, and the final product that emerged from that stakeholder forum was what culminated in the approval we received from the Federal Executive Council in late August 2016. And when we did that, we then took it again to the National Economic Council. Mining is an economic issue.
Yes.
And if you look at the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, it occupies a very, very
Major
key
part of
place
it, yes.
in that plan.
Yes.
So the governors also had their own input. They engaged us. They insisted that they wanted to know who had what license in their state. So we made it available to all the governors in the state that, look, in your state, these are all the licenses: exploration licenses, quarry licenses, mining leases.
Yes.
We gave them that information because we felt it was important that they actually should be abreast of that information.
Yes.
But we also explained to them that some of the things that states were doing were not quite in sync with the legal position in mining. Multiple taxation,
Yes.
even sealing up mining sites. Legally speaking, they are on the wrong footing.
Yes.
But we wanted to engage rather than get into all
right and
manner
who's
of,
wrong.
who
Yes.
is right and wrong. So
Yes.
we explained all this to them. Clearly, it's an inclusive product, and it's something that has guided everything that we've done since then. When we now approached even development agencies and donors, we insist that you have to work with our own plan.
Yes.
We want you to support us, but not on your own terms. We want you to support us in order to realize the objectives of our plan. So you can pick and choose what you want out of it, but it would be difficult for us to accept your own idea or your own position, which just advances whatever agenda you have. We're quite happy. This process has been thorough, it's been comprehensive, it's been inclusive, but we would plead with you to use it as the basis of whatever support you wanted to give. And the World Bank was very, very supportive of that. In fact, they adopted it as the main vehicle for the $150 million that they gave us in the sector.
Join us again after the break. So what is 60 Minutes with Angela all about? It's not an interview. I like to think it's a conversation between two people making the news, people who are in the news, and those who become the news. And the whole idea is to inform, to educate, or to clarify, as the case may be. It is an art getting people to answer the questions that everyone is thinking in their minds. And that's what we try to do on 60 Minutes with Angela. I ask all the questions that everyone's thinking about and no one wants to voice. All the questions you always wanted to ask, you get those answers on 60 Minutes with Angela. Every week on this station, 60 Minutes with Angela, getting answers to every question you always wanted to ask. Welcome back. My concluding moments now with Nigeria's Minister of Mines and Steel Development, Dr. KAYODE FAYEMI. And in February 2009, the African Union at its summit adopted the African Mining Vision. You've said that the mining roadmap includes those provisions. What is the African Mining Vision?
If you go back in history, particularly colonial history, you would note very clearly that mining, that ought to have been a cause for development and wealth creation in Africa, actually became a nemesis, a bane, a curse, because the tiny elite that found themselves in opportunistic positions to collaborate with the foreign investors never really allowed the resources generated from this to percolate down and serve the developmental interest of the countries. Take Congo DRC, one of the richest in natural resources in the world. The country is still, frankly, a basket case, and the resources are there. Even South Africa, it was that tiny elite, and that's what informed when freedom eventually came. That's what informed the insistence that equity must be given to the black minority in many of these places. Even after that, we saw what happened in Marikana a couple of years ago. And the central thrust of the African Mining Vision is that the natural resources of Africa must serve the African people, and it must help to reduce and alleviate poverty. That is the only way it will be worth it. Because frankly, right now, for all you care, we may be sitting on tons and tons of wealth, which the people don't see the benefit. And to that extent, they really don't see why they should protect any resources or understand it from the perspective of government. Because they feel government just wants to come and take their resources and then disappear and then nothing is done to improve their laws. Which is why our current law has taken on board those issues. And for us, we are active in the development, we were active in the development of the African Mining Vision, and we're still quite active in the implementation. And in the National Mining Summit we just held, a lot of my colleagues came from other African countries so that we share experiences, we reflect on the challenges, we see what we can do to, one, understand better how to structure these engagements, particularly with foreign investors. What is there to create a win-win situation in the contracts that we sign, in the agreements that we enter into, in the partnership that is inclusive of the communities and the government, and that is mutually accountable to the citizens of the country. That essentially is what the African Mining Vision seeks to achieve, and to achieve it in an environmentally safe, healthy, and sensitive manner.
Well, congratulations on Nigeria's validation for adopting principles of accountability and transparency in the governance of its oil, gas, and mining sectors. I think this was by the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. But they did mention areas where they thought we needed to improve. Widen opportunities, they say, for civil society participation, and strengthening the monitoring and oversight of this initiative. How are you going to translate that, the observations now, into reality?
We're already doing that. You may be aware that the other hat I wear is as chair of the Nigerian version of the EITI 90, the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. And I'm sure in terms of advocacy and engagement with civil society, you would have noticed that 90 has been in the front burner, so to speak. 90 has been active over the last year. The leadership changed, and we've been pursuing precisely those issues that were highlighted in the report, the validation report of the International Secretariat and Board. And basically building on the work that has been done by the leadership of 90 over the last decade. I mean, we joined 90 in 2003 as one of the pioneer countries that joined under President Obasanjo's administration. And Nigeria has played a leading role since then. But for me, it's not external validation that matters. It is transparency from our own perspective. If it meets some external standard, that's fine.
Oh, well and good.
That's good. But what is it that we can do to ensure that the resources and the revenue generated from this sector serve our people and do not just disappear into thin air? Because that is the challenge we've had to grapple with over the years. Tons of money come from our oil and gas sector, and as I said, also from the mining sector, and we don't see it reflected in the livelihoods of the citizens. One of the projects that we have embarked on here is a back audit of taxes and royalties, because we are very, very convinced from limited pilot study that we've done that even in mining, which is not a big sector like oil and gas yet, royalties are still underpaid. Taxes are not fully accounted for, because we have also not succeeded on our part to track these payments effectively. So we are setting up an independent revenue monitoring and management exercise that would enable us to go deep into what companies operating in the sector are paying, whether it is commensurate to what they are supposed to pay. And you would notice that in the oil and gas side, that regularly NNPC now publishes revenue generated in the sector for people to assess and monitor. As per civil society, we are strongly encouraging civil society actors to be involved in this sector. We've already set up a range of initiatives with support from groups like OSIWA and Ford Foundation. We're engaging more with mining correspondents and reporters. In fact, just last month, we brought about 60 reporters together in a mining community in Kogi State and engage them on what we think they ought to be doing, how curious they really ought to become about what is going on in this sector, because it's about information. If people don't have information, they're going to form their own opinion, right or wrong. And we want to make sure that we provide them with regular information. We have an online newsletter that we regularly share with people about developments in the sector.
Yes.
We engage civil society actors in the sector about issues that are germane to them, environmental issues particularly,
Yes.
because mining is an environmentally sensitive issue.
Yes.
So you have a lot of interest coming from there. You have interest about protecting mining communities, host communities, and ensuring that they really derive benefits from it. And we're encouraging these independent civil society institutions to help us track as well and to report. One civil society body went to Okaba, somewhere in Kogi State,
Yes.
and noticed some problems with coal production and fumes affecting local community by polluting the environment.
Yes.
And they sent the information to us, and we immediately got on the case, invited the company operating there, and invited the local community as well, and ensured that we laid down the rules of engagement,
Yes.
so that the company does not run foul of provisions of the Mining and Minerals Act. So civil society certainly has a lot to do.
Yes.
They have a critical role to play, and for us, we do not shy away from engaging them.
Let's talk about Ajaokuta, your attempt to revive that steel complex. You've said previously that the complex will be looked at as one and not be segmented. Are you standing by that? And if so, why? Is it more profitable that way?
Steel is the backbone of any industrialization
Yes.
initiative in any country. And currently, we're not doing very well. This is a plant that was planned since the late 60s.
Yes.
In fact, in the early 60s, the planning for this started. But the turning of the sword was done by President Shagari in 1979, I think. 79 to now is almost 40 years.
Yes.
And when you've been to that plant, you shed a tear for the country. That how could an asset this critical to the overall industrialization agenda of a country be left to rot away in this manner? It's not as if we're not producing steel now, but we're not producing liquid steel. Liquid steel is a notch above scrap metal smelting. The steel that we produce in Nigeria now
Yes.
is mainly from smelting scrap metals and then turning it into billets for all manner of construction.
That's not the viable one.
If you don't have the ultimate steel, you
Yeah.
make do with what you have and you import, because there are things that you cannot even mold with that rudimentary, if you like, level of steel production. And that's what Ajaokuta was envisioned
To produce the liquid
to
steel.
produce the liquid steel, and then it is malleable. If you want to build jet engines, you can do it. It's the molding that would determine what you do
with it.
So when we said, for us, from all the evidence available to us, we do not think unbundling or cannibalizing the
Yes.
plant into a variety of independent companies will work. They've done it. There were so many MOUs all over the place when I came here.
Yes.
Memorandum of understanding with this company, with that company. It was just sheer racket. I'm sorry. That plant has 110 megawatts of an independent power plant.
Wow.
Ajaokuta. So Ajaokuta, the power plant in Ajaokuta could supply Kogi State conveniently with power, uninterrupted. It will supply Ajaokuta itself, and then supply surrounding Okene, Lokoja, you name it. That plant was given to an independent, to a private sector operator with a view to activating it and ensuring that the power is then contributed to the national grid. But for 3 years, it was motion without movement.
Nothing happened.
Nothing happened. I had to cancelled the contract. I didn't even cancel it, I just waited for it to expire.
Yes.
And then we did not renew it. The same thing with the rolling mill then. The management gets involved with all manner of players whose expertise and commitments
is suspect.
And we feel strongly that the way to get this company off the ground is to give it to a company, a country, you name it, that has the technical capacity proven, the financial wherewithal, because it's capital intensive. It's hugely capital intensive. And the track record
You must
of
know what you've
turnaround,
done before.
yes, it does not matter who, but these are the conditions for us. So once you then have it, we can then agree with you a business plan that stipulates clearly
Yes.
how you are going to ensure that the 40-odd independent sections,
Yes.
let me call them that, sections of the plant, deliver on time, on cost, and with affordability, and then helps to spin off other steel rolling mills all around the country.
Yes.
And particularly produce flat steel, because for us, that is the ultimate. It is only when you produce flat steel that you can manufacture vehicles and do other things. Not this Mickey Mouse steel operation that we're running.
That we're doing. Thank you very much for having us in your office, Dr. Fayemi.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. I'm Angela Ajitumobi.